You ever feel like no matter what you do, you're constantly ending up in the same place? I submit to you that it's not because of what you're running from, but the fact that you're not running towards something greater. So let's talk about that today. Let's unpack that. So it's a vicious cycle that we all go through. We mess up, we feel bad, we feel guilty, we try to fix it, and we do okay for a while, but then we find ourselves right back in the same place we started. And it repeats all throughout our lives over and over and over again. This vicious cycle of guilt and shame keeping us in the same place. The reason we feel stuck is because, again, we don't have a greater yes that we're running towards. And if you're running from something, I mean, you can imagine literally anything. If you are running from something, that's because you're afraid, fear. And anything that fear drives will never yield the results that you're looking for, positive results. Anything that you're running from cannot yield positive results. And we're not talking about, you're running from a lion in the jungle. Okay, of course. But what we're talking about is when fear in running from something is based on guilt, shame, condemnation, all of those things, it will never lead you to where you're trying to go, which is on the path to purpose and revealing the greatest version of you. Running towards something is a purpose-driven life. Having a greater yes is what it will take for you to break the vicious cycles in your life. You cannot drive forward staring in a rearview mirror. You are tethered to the very thing that you're trying to escape from if that is what is constantly, consistently at the forefront of your mind. If your identity is in what you've done wrong, then it's almost like you're attached to it. I think I think I read somewhere in the Bible where, if somebody murdered somebody, then they would tie the corpse to that particular person, the murderer, and the body would have to be with the murderer as it decayed and decomposed and so forth and so on. And when we make mistakes, when we mess up, it's a similar thing. If we carry the guilt and the shame of what we've done wrong, no matter how many times you've done it wrong. And I think that that's the caveat, because we have made similar or the same mistakes over and over in our lives, we don't feel like we deserve forgiveness. We don't feel like we deserve to break free from it. So it's almost like the picture that I just painted, that you're carrying this guilt and shame with you in everything you do, everywhere you go. And maybe the first step is to break free from that, recognizing that if you've made a mistake, that means you're human. That means you're alive. And that's not to justify poor behavior. It's not to, especially not to justify consistent poor behavior, but all of us deserve forgiveness. All of us deserve a second, third, fourth chance. God gives us forgiveness. God gives us second and third, fourth chances. And if we're honest, we know that. So maybe the first step is forgiving yourself, asking for forgiveness, receiving forgiveness, and then walking in that forgiveness. But let's say you've received forgiveness and you're trying to walk in that forgiveness, but for whatever reason, you keep finding yourself back in the same place. It's because you don't have a greater yes that you are reaching towards. Guilt and shame will never create lasting change. They're fickle emotions. They will never create lasting change. And if you're looking to change and have it be consistent in your life, if you're looking for consistent change, then we need a different motivator outside of guilt, shame, and condemnation. Fear of failure keeps you tied to failure. It's just like the picture I just painted. Being afraid of something tethers you to it. And again, there's a good fear and there's a healthy fear, but what we're talking about is the unhealthy fear. Fear of anything keeps that at the forefront of your mind. There's nothing that we can do. We cannot operate with a spirit of fear on us. If you don't have a vision, you don't have direction, and you're always going to default to your old habits. So I could stop the video right there. I could stop the podcast right here. I'll say that again. If you don't have a vision, you have no direction, and you're going to default to old habits. One of my great mentors we would have these conversations, and we would talk about the fact that when I get to a certain place, when he would get to a certain place, he would hit the default button. Because when we are tethered and have this fear of failure, the grind of trying to run as fast as we can away from these failures, these fear-driven failures, we get burned out. We're human. And once we get tired of running from the failure, we're raw. And so then what do? We hit the default button. It's almost like we throw up our hands and like, well, you know what? I tried. And then we revert back to the familiar because we have not familiarized ourselves with this new version that we're reaching towards. We are not thinking like that new version of us would think. We're thinking like the old version, and we hit the default button. And you know what your default button is. You know what your default button looks like. So ask yourself this question. What excites you more than your fears discourage you? I'll answer the question again. What excites you more than your fear discourages you? Is it who you're becoming? Is it what you can have? What's rightfully yours? What about the future version of you gets you excited? The answer to those questions is where your yes resides. So, I've been through a divorce, and I tell people all the time that more than any other tragedy in my life, personally, divorce is at the top. So oftentimes when people go through divorces, their idea or their desire to want to be married again usually wanes. For some, it's extreme. Some people swear it off. I will never get married again. For me, even though I experienced divorce twice, my desire to be a husband, to be a great father, never waned because I understood the beauty of marriage. I understood the beauty and the great responsibility of being a committed, present father. So even though divorce was one of the hardest things I ever had to deal with, I never lost sight of the fact that one of my ultimate desires was to be a great husband and to be a great father. And I understood how those things work together. So I knew that the future version of me would find joy in being being married, having a family, and the beauty that entails. So not allowing tragedy to jade me, to harden my heart towards this beautiful thing became my yes. So again, what excites you? What about the future version of you excites you more than your fears discourage you? Answer that question for yourself. Define what your yes looks like. Just like the example What about the future version of you excites you, makes you want to get out the bed in the morning? And answering that question might be a challenge for you. So I want to challenge you even further to say, don't look at your surroundings right now. Don't allow your fear and hopelessness to infiltrate your answer. All bets off. You can't fail. What about the version of yourself in the future excites you? That's where your yes lies. Shift your focus forward. After you answer that question, I want you to shift your focus forward. What does that mean? That means, like the analogy we spoke about in the beginning, instead of trying to drive a car by looking in the rearview mirror, look forward, press forward. Whatever you define that yes to be, focus on that, not on where you've been, what you did, or how many times you did it. Because all of that is a trap to keep you where you are. As soon as you decide in your heart to focus forward, you will get a momentum that you've never experienced before. And you have to understand that that is the secret sauce to you breaking free from these cycles. Being okay with who you are right now and deciding that I'm going to focus on this version of myself that I know I was created to be. That version of yourself exists. It is not a far off thing. It's not a fantasy. You're not creating that person. You're removing all of the things from your past and present that hinder you from seeing that you are already that person. You were created to be that person before the foundations of this world were created. You were created with a purpose, and that purpose exists. So I want to make that distinction that you're not striving to become this person. You're removing anything, all of the erroneous things that prevent you from recognizing when you look in the mirror that that person exists already. I want you to take one small step today towards that person. You get to define what that step is. You get to define the parameters of that step. But make no mistake about it, nothing changes in your life without motion. So you can listen to this over and over and over again and feel inspired. You can find some other self-help book. You can find some other podcast that makes you feel good and inspired. But until you decide to set in motion what is rightfully yours, none of this matters. And don't fall for the trap of trying to take a step that's greater than your capacity right now. You decide what that step looks like, but make no mistake about it, you've got to take a step. Define what your yes looks like and take a step towards that. Your past and anything that you've done is a lesson, a life lesson. It's not a life sentence. I'll say that again. Your past is a lesson, not a life sentence. If you, by the grace of God, still have breath in your body, in your lungs, then that means that you have an opportunity to continue to evolve, to allow that beautiful, beautiful person that exists on the inside of you to be revealed for your good and the good of this world around you. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to keep moving forward. I said in several other videos, and I got this from Atomic Habits, the book, which I highly recommend. All you have to be is 1% better. I can tell you from personal experience in my life that the sheer magnitude of feeling like I have so much in my life to correct was the thing that I used subconsciously. The fear of that load was the thing that stopped me. Well, it's just so much. Where do I even begin? I guess I won't begin. Hit the default button, stay where I am. But when you recognize that this is not about chasing perfection or being perfect at any given moment, this is literally just chiseling away at the things that don't serve your purpose. And as you chisel away 1% or more on a regular, consistent basis, you will be revealed, probably first to yourself and then to the world around you, and maybe beyond. But don't get it twisted. Most change, real change, is a private victory before it's a public victory. So don't become weary in well-doing when you don't see everybody cheering you on around you. That day may come, but it won't come, and it shouldn't come before you start to see the change. You see it. Private victories before public victories. So I hope you enjoyed this video or podcast, wherever you're listening or watching. I would love for you to let me know in the comments if this meant something to you. And as usual, if it meant something to you, I would love for you to pass it on to somebody that you think could benefit from this message. Share it with somebody. Would love for you to subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If I could be of service to you in any way, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Until the next video, peace, and I hope this blesses you. Take care.